And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the big1050.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and getting caught by a Windows update at the beginning of this show, but we'll get through it. And
So
no
those
time,
on video
hopefully.
can hear Sam. They just can't see Sam. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, but
He's here.
We'll get through it momentarily, hopefully. Doesn't take too long, but it crashed my computer. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about this week as the Wolverines went out to USC and expected the Trojans to be able to pass against the Wolverines. Maybe they passed a little bit different than expected. Thought they would be throwing down the field. They actually, went a lot of screens, a lot of underneath stuff, but it was the 220 yards rushing, 20 plus yards rushing. That was the real gut punch, not expected. Certainly knew Michigan had an issue there. Knew that there was something that we were going to have to look out for, that they were going to have to clean up. Didn't get cleaned up and wound up allowing USC to have balance and ultimately the emphatic win for the Trojans. Joining me to break that down and talk about what it means moving forward, the MGoBlog Roundtable crew, starting with Brian Cook. Brian, good morning. How are you?
I guess I'll say I'm well.
Seth Fisher, good morning. How are you?
Well, Sam, I also did the Windows update, so I've crashed twice since then. Do not allow Windows to update your machine this week. Wait till they get the next one in.
It's my only hope of being able to get on is to let it go through the update. so anyway, Craig Ross, how are you?
I'm doing good. I think almost all Michigan fans of the past 10 years will understand what 27 for 27 means. And I think there'll now be a new one. It's 3rd and 26.
Just killing me with that one. But anyway, let's dive in. Obviously defense drawing a lot of the attention. Offense had its share of issues when it finally got the ball, mostly in the second half. Hardly had the ball in the first half because the Trojans possessed the ball quite a bit. So, Brian, let's just start there with your broad brush kind of takeaway from the game.
I mean, so one thing that we talked about going into this game is that we didn't want USC to line up with 2 tight ends, one of whom is a wide receiver in all but name, and for Michigan to respond with 5-2, and that's exactly what they did. And so the thing that was really striking about this is how easy it was for USC. Like the touchdown to Lemon at the end of the first half was probably the only difficult play they had all day. The rest of it was just running screens, which Michigan was completely unprepared to contest, or running off tackle, running power, or just throwing it to guys who were blazingly wide open and were obviously blazingly wide open from the snap. And halfway through year 2, if this is how your defense is going to perform, I don't see how this gets any better. I don't see how you recover this, because it's been an arrow straight down, basically. Like there was that blip at the end of last year after the team kind of like had a meeting with Wink and was like, this isn't working. You need to simplify this because we're trying to do too many things. And they look uncoached. And I know that's not the case. I know that someone's attempting to coach them, but they just have no idea what they're doing out there. And you've got very basic things that are getting screwed up. You have run fits that where the linebacker isn't showing up in the gap, or Jason Barham is just trying to freelance and he's not actually playing team football. And I think people have been asking, well, the offense only scored 13 points. Defense, why aren't we talking more about how the offense isn't living up to expectation? And that's because, one, this game didn't have a lot of possessions in it. And so 13 points isn't great, but 31 points is so much worse when we're talking about like an 8-9 possession game. And 2, like I charted the offense, and I'm relatively optimistic about it despite the outcomes because they moved the ball. And they had breakdowns and they had issues, and a lot of that traces back to having a freshman quarterback. So the things that we're seeing on offense are more or less expected. And you're also seeing progress from Evan Link and Andrew Marsh and Bryce Underwood. You're seeing guys perform better as we go along, and it feels like on defense they're only performing worse. So for me, I think it's just a matter of time before Wink Martindale is fired. And I would have fired him Saturday, but whatever, because there's no way back from this. And fundamentally, I just don't think Wink Martindale can teach college players, because he doesn't know what they don't know, because he's been in the NFL for 500 years, and he's not used to like, okay, what am I supposed to do with Brandon Hillman? How am I supposed to teach Brandon Hillman? How am I supposed to get him to play responsible football? Because when he gets someone in the NFL, they've already been taught for 5 or 6 years by other coaches who are better at this than he is. And I just fundamentally think that when we talk about like the Ravens system, that's not his system. The Ravens system came in after he left the Ravens, and that's why no one in the NFL wanted him. Because if the most popular defense in the NFL was invented by this guy, he'd still be in the NFL. So I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think it's a lot of public relations from him. And he had the worst defense in the NFL with the Giants before he left. And I'm not. It's just it's unfortunate that Wink. Sharon had to hire coordinators when he did. So he had to go for an internal hire on offense, and this looked like a decent idea on defense. It's not. It's game over. Like, it's like there's no way back from this. There's just not.
It's interesting because there really was no way back from 27 for 27 either. And once that happened, it was over. I think, and I think it's the same thing here. I tend to agree. It's not that Wink isn't a football expert. It's not that he doesn't understand the abstractions of the game or anything like that. It's just that what he's doing makes absolutely no sense in the context of the players he's got, at least to me. So I don't know how he endures it. Now, maybe it can turn around this week. I mean, this game is an inflection point, I think, for the program. Washington's a good team, not a great team. And they've got some weaknesses that are exploitable. But, whether they can or not, it seems to me. I mean, if they lose this week, it seems to me they're just playing out the season, probably. Hopefully, as well as they can. If they win this week, well, maybe there's some chance, especially if the defense sort of turns around as it did last year. But you don't see any hope of a reversion to last year. And that's what it seems like.
So last year, some of the problems were like, let's stop playing Mason Graham at defensive end.
Right.
Like transparent stuff. And then he could play some relatively basic stuff and it would work because they had 2 of the best defensive tackles in the country, and they had Derek Moore and they had Josiah Stewart, and they had players. I'm sorry, they didn't have Stewart last year, but I think the rubber is hitting the road here, where it's like all the guys on the team who seem to know what they're doing are guys who have been around before Wink, and that tends to happen. But Hillman in particular, I can't imagine many other teams playing Brandon Hillman, many other past Michigan teams, when they have other options, because he's explosive and he's interesting, but he's also reckless. And that third down conversion is all on him, and it just feels like that's not a trade-off worth making. And for that to be your starting safety, even when Rod Moore is back and he's like your number one option, I can't comprehend that. I can't comprehend the fact that you're playing literally 5 defensive linemen, and they rush. There's 73 different instances of a defensive tackle rushing the quarterback in this game. They get 2 pressures. That's a 2.7% win rate for all 3 of them. And at no point did they decide to okay, well, these guys aren't getting the quarterback anyway. Let's just feint him towards the quarterback and then drop him into a short zone in case there's another tunnel screen. Like, There were 11 screens from USC in this game for 8.5 yards a pop.
From the same formation. They're
There's
telegraphing it. They're telling you what they're going to run.
like, and then the TV would cut to Lincoln Riley, and he was just smirking the whole game because he was like, I can't believe it's this easy. Like, they line up in some crazy formation where there's not anyone within 20 yards of the best wide receiver in the country. And I know that's a bust. I know that's not what Wink drew up, but fundamentally, Wink's responsible for getting the guys not to bust. And the bust rate on this defense is enormous. So I don't necessarily care what the plan was, because it's very clear that Wink can't get his guys to execute his plan.
What plan? I got a lot.
Was that too nice for you?
I got a lot to say. Yeah. I mean, because last week I'm like, okay, this kind of the stuff that you're doing is not. It's not great, but this makes sense against Wisconsin. Blitz your 5. That's what you want to do. Wink wants to get to the quarterback, and you could tell. You could say you don't know what the plan was. I know exactly what the plan was. They thought they were going to pass deep. They were going to have a long rush, and they thought they were going to be throwing long against them. And if you watched any of USC at all, or if you watched Lincoln Riley ever, we've all watched Lincoln Riley. He was at Oklahoma. All of his quarterbacks are like 75% of the NFL best players in the NFL are his guys. Like you've seen how this guy plays, and he gives his quarterbacks a read, and then they throw it. So the one thing you have to do is take away that first read. The one thing you have to do. And there are ways to do that with this defense if you practice this system and you stick to it. But they don't even have they run the same defensive play like 4 times at most a game. They have so much on their plate, and they threw a whole new thing out there this time. And Brian mentioned this. We were talking about this, all week last week. Don't do this 5-2 against 2 tight ends against USC. It's exactly how they want to get you. Because all you're doing is you're matching a defensive tackle for one of their receivers, and they're just going to spread you out. And the second play of the game, right after their first down, they come out they put their 2 tight ends as wide receivers. Like, let's try this. Let's see if he's really, really this dumb. Because they saw it, and the bloggers saw it. And I gotta just set where I am, right? What level of understanding of football I have. I am not somebody who could be a coach at Michigan. If there's any point where I can call something out before a game, and then and like you go and do it anyway, that is bad. I should not be the one to be able to point the stuff out. Okay? If you're falling below Seth, you are not capable. You are an incompetent coach. I'm an incompetent coach, and that's why I'm a blogger, not a coach. You should not be falling below the Seth level. And this was below Seth level. They got 81% of the yards available to them. The only reason they didn't score a touchdown every single time they got the ball is one time they got hosed on an out of bounds call that they actually got his toe down and they didn't review it, and they had 2 turnovers in the red zone, which okay, that's USC screwing that up. It's not like yes, I credit Jair Hill and I gave him his points for hitting the side and how they tackled and they caused a fumble there. But that's, it's also how the guy holds it. And Maeva's interception was just on Maeva. That's the only stops we got, except for at the end of the game. There was a kneel down and 3 runs after the game was already decided.
And it's not everything else. Those were the only stops. It's that it was so easy for USC.
Yeah.
Their standard down success rate was 66%, which is what you see. That was Michigan's success rate against Central Michigan. Right? So the reason that it wasn't 63 points in this game was not about the proficiency of what Wink was doing. Michigan easily could have given up 63 points in this game if there were more possessions and if they didn't get lucky on a couple of different possessions. This was the most humiliating defensive performance I think I've seen at Michigan since we're going to say that Purdue game where they installed the 3-3-5 of the bye week.
Yeah.
And this might have actually been worse. Because
that team was terrible.
That team was terrible and didn't have the kind of talent that this team has. This team has players.
Right.
Like, this team has a lot of guys who are going to be drafted by the NFL, and they look completely incompetent. And that goes back to the coordinator.
So go ahead.
We talked about the 5-2 thing. I didn't get to finish this thought. He actually installed a new defense for this game.
Yeah,
with 3 defensive tackles. It was 3 DTs, and then he had Barham and Sullivan on either side of it. And I called it a 5-1 in my charting, but whatever. It went back to the 5-1 that they ran with the Ravens in 2020. And okay, yeah, that's an interesting defense. Yes, it's an interesting response to nothing that USC does. That is not a defense that you use again. That's okay, if these guys are doing long drop back passes against us, this is how we're going to mess them up. We're going to get some sacks out of this. That doesn't work if they're getting their ball out in 1.5 seconds. What you have to do against a team like this is figure out where they're going to throw it first and cover it. And there were opportunities to do that. And there were a lot of opportunities in their defense to say ahead of time, we're going to run this. Ernest, you got to be here. Because we're blitzing from here, that's where his eyes are going to go. Roller, you got to be here. Roller's sitting, bouncing around in the middle. They got a 5-man blitz on. They have nobody over the tight end in the slot because TJ Guy was out there and TJ Guy blitzes. Okay? And this is exactly where Maeva's eyes are going to go because you got a blitz coming right there. That's where his eyes were before the snap. That's where the blitz is coming from. And you got Roller sitting in the middle, and he's standing 1, 2, 3 beats, and then he tries to get over the tight end. He has no chance to get over there. And it's like, how do you run that play without practicing Roller getting over that tight end every single time? And then we talk about the touchdown. Brian mentioned this is like the one play that was hard. It should not have been. That never should have been a touchdown. The one on Jaden Sanders, it looks like Jaden Sanders is in good position. He defends it well. He's on the wrong side. That play call was, I mean, you want to talk about play call. That play call was fine. But they had a timeout right before that play call. You've got a true freshman who's going up against one of the best receivers in the country. The only thing you should be talking about in that timeout is you have to be on his outside shoulder. You've got Rod Moore inside, be on his outside shoulder. And that throw is never made. Because that defense that they called on that play is to stop him from getting the ball. And you got a freshman cornerback. And you know you have a freshman cornerback, and you can play Jaden Sanders. He's a smart guy. But freshman cornerback needs to be told by the coordinator, by his coaches, somebody on that staff, on that timeout has to say, this is the shoulder you got to be on. That's college players. And that has always been college players, and that will always be college. In 2023, they had the same conversation. Do you think those guys are so smart? Mikey Sainristil, you could see him on the sideline having the conversations with his coaches about what shoulder to be on. Because that's college players. And they don't do that.
So, Sam is going nuts right now.
Yeah, so I'm not going nuts, but so several things. I think that Wink has made the mistake that a lot of coaches make, that they fall in love with their stuff and their calls that on paper they're supposed to work. You know, I was talking about this with Vance. He said, man, it's a great call. But if your guys can't execute the call, then what good is the call? And I just think that he calls things that these guys can't execute. One of the plays that sticks out to me is the play before that touchdown that you're talking about. There was a screen to the field. I talked about this before you guys came on. Mm-hmm. And they were blitzing. They were in Bear, and they were blitzing Jimmy. And Jimmy. I
know what you're talking about.
And Jimmy was pointing. They motioned the trips, and Jimmy was pointing with the motion, and clearly he was pointing for someone to drop to the field, and no one drops. So, you know, there was at that point, maybe they're saying maybe there was an adjustment, or there was supposed to be an adjustment they had from practice. At some point, there was some kind of adjustment that was supposed to be made.
That was screen 3 out of 11.
And there was no adjustment that was made. Never saw anyone really react to it. So the point is that that's not something that they can do. And if you have a piece of your defense or an aspect of your defense, a call in your defense that they just can't execute, then you can't call that defense. You got to call more base stuff, especially with as many guys as you're playing. Maybe you got some things in your defense that certain guys can do, but you play so many guys that maybe that's one of the reasons why you got to just be more basic in the things that you call. I think there is definitely merit to that. I think that there are. I think that's one of the things that you have guys on the defense saying, like, as far as the breadth of defense that they run. That was one of the things, which I think last year, I actually think it made a lot more sense to run less because they could do more because they were more talented. I think this defense actually needs more assistance from scheme because they aren't as talented. Problem is, he can't put as much as maybe he thought he could because they can't make the kind of adjustments that they need to make in order to run as much as he wants to run. You got to calibrate for that. And he hasn't calibrated effectively. Now, the flip side of that, before I get to that, there are other things that they need to do that have nothing to do with scheme. From a coaching perspective, your players should be able to line up to tempo. Been doing it for too long for guys to
Are we practicing it? Are we practicing that? Or are we practicing 3 DTs with a new formation?
For guys to not be able to line up the tempo. That is going to be a thing this week. If guys cannot line up the tempo this week, you got to assume that it just wasn't emphasized enough, because that was an issue in this game last year. It was an issue in the USC game. So it should not be an issue in this game this week. The run fits, man. So you have, setting aside the repeat offenders, you have guys that were attacking plays wrong. And then you have, I think, an issue where they don't, when it comes to the squeezing plays, whether it's strategically how you attack plays and then squeezing and restricting plays so holes aren't so wide, whether it's blockers coming through or ball carriers coming through with holes that are size of trucks being able to drive through them. The way in which you attack some of these run plays, again, this has to be a point of emphasis. And I almost certainly believe it has to be the case after this game, because it was egregious. It was egregious. The offenses, we were talking about it last week, talked about it the week before. They have got to address the run defense. Statistically, it doesn't say it's a problem, but I'm telling you, watching these games, it's a problem. Well, now guess what? Statistically in this game, it was a problem. All of that being said, I gave you all the coaching issues. If players look at that game and come out of it and say that it's all wink, that is all the calls, and that they don't have to do and I'm talking about some of the older guys, because one of the things, like you said, Jaden Sanders lined up wrong. Jaden Sanders didn't line up wrong on that.
Not line up wrong. He was just on the wrong. No, he lets him cross him on the wrong side of the shoulder.
That may be.
You got to stay outside him that whole time, because you got help with Rod Moore.
Rod was supposed to be outside on that play. Rod was supposed to be outside on that play. Rod was supposed to be outside on that play. So after a timeout, just like on some of those run plays, you got an edge that's supposed to set an edge. Just like on some of those tackles on a 4th and 1 or on a 3rd and 26, when you got an opportunity to bring a ball carrier down, you got an opportunity to make a tackle. You got to make a tackle. So the point is, there are absolutely issues with coaching that have to be addressed. But to the point where it relieves accountability for plays that have to be made, for responsibility, accountability that has to be had for plays that should be clear. I mean, there were 3 tacklers around a 4th and 1. You got to bring that guy down. You got two shots. You had a couple of safeties with a shot with a ball carrier on the 3rd and 26 play. One of them got to bring him down.
Well, as soon as Hillman loses leverage there, Moore is done. Like he can't make up that ground. That's not on. I mean, that's just one mistake from Hillman there. And then on that 4th and 1, like Hillman is in the backfield, but again, you see hero ball from Jyshawn Barham, who's trying to get inside when if he just holds the edge there, that's a 5-yard loss.
Correct. 100%. Both safeties on the 3rd 26 should be, well, I'm trying not to individualize the players as much as possible. I'm trying not to do that.
Hillman is Hillman. No one's gonna be able to look at that film and say like, Brandon Hillman, you had an okay game. He had a terrible game. He's still Brandon Hillman. There were still a lot of points that I thought that Brandon Hillman did a good job in that game, and there are things that he does that no one else can do. I want that guy to be a player. So I want them to develop that guy.
The Mekhi Lemon play was keep away from Mekhi Lemon. If he goes inside, it's a double. If he goes outside, it's a double. That's what it was supposed to be.
Okay, I get that. I don't believe you that Rod Moore was supposed to be outside. It's just the way they lined up. It makes sense to me.
I'm telling you what it was supposed to be.
I could tell you they said that. I believe you that they said that.
I'm telling you what it was supposed to be.
I don't believe them. I don't believe them. That sounds like a Rod Moore on me thing. It's just there's so many things. And last week, Sam, you talked to us about how you talked to them, and I think this was true. I believe that they said this to you, that you asked if they box or do they spill, and they said it depends on the play call. You got Jyshawn Barham that you just moved to defensive end, right? But you already have some power problems, and now you're going to have some play calls where you spill. Now you're going to have some times where, okay, we're going to change up the basic rules of this defense. Everything, since this defense has been not that hard for me to chart since they put it in 2021. And I've charted every single play of this defense since 21. Okay. And I always knew who was at fault for things because I knew the rules. And the players knew the rules. You talk like they got to know when to box, when to be on the outside, when to be. I'm looking at these plays sometimes and I don't know who's supposed to be on what side, on which shoulder, because one guy's running it one way and one guy's running it another way. And you're telling us last week that they run it 2 different ways. This is college ball. You have to play college football. College football is not the NFL. I get why you would change things up in the NFL once in a while because it screws up their blocking angle on a couple plays, and a couple plays can change to make the difference.
So like, I think the thing here is like, you got to walk before you can run, right? Like you got to install something that everybody can run every time, and then you can build on it from there. And I don't see what the base is. Like I don't see the alignment where I'm confident that Michigan knows what they're doing in this situation. So you just see guys running wide open. Like there's with a tight end down the seam on that play where it's just like Maeva knows exactly where he's going pre-snap, and it's like, okay, we're baiting him. Like there's going to be someone running under this, and he's going to have to come off it. Nope. The thing that looks wide open pre-snap is wide open. So whatever sort of like benefit you're supposed to be getting from the fact that Wink Martindale calls all these tricky defenses just seems to be backfiring immensely, where it's just like we're running the tricky things, but instead of running the tricky things to trick the opponent, mostly we're tricking our own players.
Yeah. I mean, look at Iowa. Iowa, has good defenses year after year without NFL guys because they're doing very simple things, predictable defenses that they do really well over and over and over. And, so it seems to me once you get to that spot, okay, and then as Brian says, you can begin to do more. Speaking of more, how come he isn't playing more? I mean,
Derek.
Derek.
Oh,
Derek, not Rod. I mean, Derek Moore's getting what, half the snaps?
That's another.
He got like Cam Brandt had one more snap than Derek Moore in this game.
Does that make any sense to you guys?
No,
I think it was the other way around, but either way, yeah, no, it does not make sense. It doesn't make sense why TJ Guy, will hold an edge, right? Who actually can get around a guy and will be responsible in this defense, unless this year's over and we're just looking at the window when Bryce is a sophomore and junior and saying, let's coach up the guys let's get some experience for the guys who are going to be here next year. It looks That's the only thing I can explain about.
So a couple things. Teams box and spill in college. I think to your point, Brian, it may not make sense for this team to run both strategies, but
sure, I'm sure 2023 they were running both, but that's because they were a hyper advanced defense and they like knew exactly what they were doing. Like this defense has got to pick one and live with it, right? Like
yeah.
I guess for me, simple is better. Whatever allows them to play fast without much confusion, without guys having to make as many adjustments is king. As far as TJ Guy, what I would say is how we saw him play in this game when he got in for Jay-Sean is like, that's it. But that's better than how he played. Or it was like a response, because to me, I think he got benched after the Oklahoma game. And I remember saying, I see this as they must be challenging him or something. And is this I'm looking at this as maybe the response to that, maybe, because he seems to be playing. This is a more physical guy that I saw out there. The way TJ Guy played Saturday on the edge is the way you need to be playing the run. It was different. It was like that. That's put his tape on. It was like, okay, this is how you need to play. This is what we need right here.
And no offense to Dominic Nichols, who got twice as many snaps as TJ Guy. But Dominic Nichols is a sophomore. He's young. You expect him to make mistakes. I would expect the snap counts to be absolutely flipped just based off of what I've charted both those guys this year. Because Nichols, he's another guy who gave up the edge. There's the rollout where Maeva makes an incredible throw for 28 yards. That's if you've coached that right, then that's a sack. Sullivan got through, and the edge has to see, hey, I got, my buddy's inside. All I got to do is get the edge. That has been a focus since 21. Do not give up the edge. That is number one. We're going to put Hutchinson out there. It's that important. Do not give up the edge.
All right, we got to get to a break. We'll be back on the other side. More MGoBlog Roundtable here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK, online at thebig1050.com.
Clear on the radio.
Sam, do you remember there was a defensive back for Michigan? Was his name Darnell Hood?
Yeah, I remember Darnell.
I remember Darnell.
He was a fashion model. I think he became, and at one press conference I was at, someone said to him, geez, you seem a lot faster this year than last year. And he said, no, I'm not any faster. You just play faster when you know what you're doing. And I think that was actually a very sort of interesting quote, that you play faster when you know what you're doing. My impression is this defense doesn't know what it's doing. I mean, and that's the big picture I think that Brian and Seth are trying to paint. And I think in painting that picture, you really are saying this is a coaching problem.
What do you, so I'm curious, JSJ, what are you talking about? I'm not sure. What did I say that you drew your eye or so?
I'm not sure what you said. Me too.
Yeah, for the listeners, he said, "Come on, Sam, you better than this mess."
We're in the break right now, so it's only people on the. It's only people on the.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know we replay it, but I don't.
Yeah. I replay it and people listen.
Yeah,
people turn on YouTube and listen to it too.
Yeah.
Man, like while we're on break and off topic and on the topic.
You can swear now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Please don't do that though.
You can use the word dumbass now, I think.
Right.
Like Uno.
These mics are still, the mics are still hot, people. The mics are still hot.
Kissing.
We don't, you know.
All right.
Yeah, I remember Darnell Hood because I worked at Pizza Bob's. He used to come in all the time. He was one of the guys who came in after practice and recarbonated.
Yeah, I just thought that at least for a player presser, that was one of the more interesting things I heard.
He was a running back, and so he used to come in and like give me stuff going on with the running backs. And that, I was, what do you mean this Mike Hart kid's going to be good? What are you talking about?
Back in moment, guys.
The 3-star from New York? What? And then he was, and then he switched to cornerback.
Yeah.
That's how that was originally he was actually my original connection to a lot of the DBs that I know. Yeah.
Let's see.
Speaking of DBs, by the way, from that era, Isaiah Combs passed away this week.
I saw that. Do you know what was going on with him?
He had a heart attack.
Heart attack?
Yeah.
Yeah, really sad.
Yeah. I only got to meet him a couple times, but he came to one of our events, and I met him at a Marlin thing that we did, and he was the one who told me about, like, I talked to him for a little bit. He was the one who told me that ask every single player if they ever thought about transferring, and you're gonna get a yes. I thought that's one of the more interesting things I've ever learned.
All right, now we're back in about 20 seconds, guys. Stand by.
It's got a kid too, I think. If I recall.
And we're coming back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the big1050.com. Before we get back to the MGoBlog Roundtable, I want to tell those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle, you should get on board with Brighton Ford. Brighton Ford, where your next adventure begins, ready to take the wheel of your dream Ford. At Brighton Ford, it's more than just buying a car. It's stepping into a lifestyle of power, performance, and possibility. Feel the thrill, take it for a spin, and drive it home today. Experience the Brighton Ford difference where excitement meets excellence. If you're leasing a car already, make the switch seamlessly. Brighton Ford will pick up your current lease and deliver your new Ford right to your doorstep. No hassle, no stress, just pure convenience from your first test drive to your next oil change. Brighton Ford delivers premium service every step of the way. They don't want to just sell you a car. They want to make owning a Ford from Brighton Ford an unforgettable experience. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Get on board with Brighton Ford. Back to the MGoBlog Roundtable. And so, listen, I think as far as adjustments concerned, because we want to get some offense in, I think, I don't think that they have much in the way of, I just don't think that they have much in the way of zone adjustments that they can really make. They are not a pattern match team. They could stand to be, could they tighten up in their zone awareness? Sure, but I think their primary adjustment probably will be to play some more man with guys back now, with Rod back, with Caleb Anderson back, with Zeke back. Get more comfortable with playing some man and take your chances, even though that'll leave you more vulnerable to some shots. But it'll make your defense tighter. So I think that'll be maybe one of the adjustments. Think they'll maybe play some cover 3. I think that'll be one of the adjustments. And then we'll see if they are tighter in their run fits after with some emphasis. And see if they can live in that world. Now, this is my speculation on the matter based on history. We'll have to see if that comes to fruition. And I hope that after that experience that we saw last week, that was enough of a jolt with watching USC run over, around, and through them, and see them carve them up. Carve their zone defense of their zone pressures up, that was enough to say, hey man, we at least from the standpoint of having to play some different run defense, this is going to make them tighten up in those respects.
Sam, I know you want to get to the offense, but do you want to go through another offseason with Wink in charge of this? Coordinating.
Whoa! Hey! That's not a question that we should ask.
I know.
Sam,
I'm not asking Sam. I shouldn't ask Sam. You're right. Okay, that's
ask Brian. Ask Brian the question.
No, Brian already answered.
All right, that's no. Let's talk about the offense.
Yeah.
Yeah, offense.
So, you look at this game, and one thing that pops out is that they almost got there. There were a number of issues, and a lot of them get traced back to the quarterback, where Underwood is uncomfortable with pressure or making a wrong read here or making a bad throw here and there. But he offsets that by throwing for 8.4 yards a carry. He has a couple of really nice hole shots. And in contrast to the defense, it feels like something where they're making progress. They found a wide receiver 2 in Andrew Marsh, who had an excellent game. And you can see the way the pieces are supposed to move, and you can see them getting there. So the RPOs are prominent in this game. I know that you said that, Sam, that there's been 16 or 15 in most games, but some of those I feel like maybe those reads aren't live. And now it seems like halfway through the season, more and more of those reads are coming online. So you get that glance route to McCulley off the RPO where they're showing aggressive pressure, and that's clearly like a legitimate read where he's attempting to find, attempting to exploit the aggression of the opposing defense, and that's coming. It's not consistent, but you can see it coming. And one disappointment that I did have is in the second half, there were a couple of really painful missed cuts from Jordan Marshall. So I felt that the blocking was okay. We had this conversation last week about the pass blocking where I was like, it seemed fine to me. And you were like, well, and I think we might be in the same situation here, because I felt like a lot of the pressure that Bryce had was like heavy blitzes where you just got to get your quick game going. And he had options, but he wasn't certain. He wasn't seeing the field as well as he needs to see. And he's just like a beat slow. So there were a couple of plays where it's like, I want him to get to that faster. I understand why he's not getting to that faster, because he is 18 years old. He's a true freshman. So in contrast to how I felt about the defense, I was relatively optimistic about this offense coming out of this game, despite only scoring 13 points. They had one drive that was nerfed by a pretty ridiculous offensive pass interference penalty. You had another drive where Michigan kind of shot themselves in the foot with a false start, and then a sack that Underwood didn't need to take that pushed them out of field goal range. And it's just the kind of mistakes they make don't feel like the kind of mistakes that the defense is making, where like I could watch the USC game tape 100 times and couldn't figure out how that defense was going to succeed. I think that there are a couple of tweaks and a little bit of progress that they need to make on offense, and they'll have a good offense.
Yeah, I agree. The offense seems coherent, makes sense. The mistakes, there were a lot of mistakes by Underwood, but you also see some spectacular plays by him where you say, wow, a couple of sidearm throws on one drive and probably the only way he could get the ball to where it needed to go were those throws. So yeah, and as you point out, one drive was stopped by an absurd offensive pass interference penalty that was just plain wrong. Another drive was stopped by a pretty marginal illegal start by Klein.
Yeah,
but it was.
He's on the line. Last scrimmage, and he moved. I'm not going to complain when they get a call right.
Yeah, well, that'd be nice if they would have seen the same thing on the other side. Michigan, incidentally, is now 136 out of 136 in penalties called against the penalties called on the opposition, and they're 136 of 136 on the number of yards penalties on the opposition, and it's not even close between 136 and 135. So there's that. But beyond that, I felt the offense was okay. And they gained a lot of yards, and if they would have had more opportunities because the defense was a little more coherent, we wouldn't. What did they gain? 450 yards, I think, something in that range.
So someone put the touchdown he threw to Marsh. Someone put the all 22 of that one online.
Yeah,
and it's interesting because it reminds me of JJ, where he's just got a feel for what a safety can do and what his arm can do, and it's like they're in a cover 2 or a trap 2 on that, right? Because that corner gives them a free release, so you're like, okay, that's not a play. That's not normally a throw you don't make, But there are certain quarterbacks, and you see this in the NFL all the time. There are certain quarterbacks who are just like, that safety's mine. That safety is not going to get over. And Bryce has this quality that seems to come out sometimes where he's just got a feel for, the basketball side of football, I think of it, right? Like, I can just beat this guy. My arm is good enough to waste this guy. And he gets that thing in there so beautifully and so quickly, that safety is just dead. And in college, I love that. In the NFL, it's hard because they're all ninjas, right? But like in college, there are going to be guys that you can just abuse. And when you got somebody in there with like a killer stroke like that, you can see where this is going. And that's the thing with the offense. But like Brian said, it can't, they're freshmen. They're going to make some mistakes. I thought El Hadi looked like he made some mistakes that I didn't want to see a senior making, but he's been injured. He probably needs some time to get back. But the other guys making mistakes are usually freshmen, and the freshmen who are making mistakes, you can see what they're going to be when they're not.
Yeah, I like the Bryce, how in the red zone has two receivers now that he feels like he has really good options. You obviously, we know McCulley, he can throw it up too, but you got Marsh as well, but because both receivers were open on the crosses. But I also like that particular play. I remember thinking, because when Bryce is in the pocket, I think that the thing that is apparent is that he's antsy about the rush. Like, yeah, keep talking about his feet, and he's tapping his feet in the pocket, and he's nervous about the rush. Like when he's calm, he'll go through his progressions. Like he'll read the defense out, but he's moving around a bit, which is why I remember last week it's like, give him a, maybe max him up a couple times, a few, just a few times. Now, Michigan, they really don't have receivers like that. That's what you would think. But now with McCulley and Marsh, maybe a couple times a game, maybe you go ahead and just, run a couple play actions. Let's just see. You feel like you got a couple of receivers that you might be able to get a couple of plays where they will get open. You will get a couple of good plays with max protection where he's comfortable in the pocket, just letting something come open. I think they've shown that, and you want some situations where Bryce just feels comfortable just sitting in the pocket going through there. That's the difference right now. Just getting him to the point where he's comfortable in the pocket. He obviously can throw on the run. I think the one really bad mistake he made wasn't even one where he misread the defense. It was one where he just predetermined where he was going to go with the foot. He decided, before he snapped the football, I'm throwing it to McCulley. He didn't even just threw it.
Well, are you talking about the interception?
Yeah.
Well, to me, that was a very strange play because McCulley beats this guy inside, and then all of a sudden he's doing a pirouette in the middle of his route, which is not a natural thing to have happen, right? And to me, that's probably interference, but we didn't get a replay that gives you any kind of indicator either way. But if McCulley doesn't do that and just runs down the field like a normal person, I think that's a completion. To me, that ball was in the right place. The wide receiver was not, for reasons that remain mysterious to me. Now, the Marsh incompletion on the goal line was a little short, and he had a step or two on his guy, and that could have been, an easy walk-in touchdown. He puts it a little short, and then the guy is in position to break it up. And then there's those two sideline shots to McCulley where, the first play of the game, it's an RPO, and he decides he's going to pull it and throw the fade against a six-man box. Didn't really make sense to me. But if you're going to throw that, you just got to punt it up to your guy, right? And it's very flat, and McCulley can barely get a finger on it. There was a second one later in the game, and that kind of reminded me of what was happening in the spring game, where his balls were too flat, and he wasn't, arcing them enough so that, a guy like McCulley, all you want to do in all those situations is just give him a chance. And, there were a couple of regressions here. There were a couple of progressions. I thought his RPO reads were very good and very impactful. Like, I just felt like he's getting more comfortable in the offense. But as you said, Sam, the pressure is something that does kind of jump out, is that when opponents stack the box, he's pretty uncomfortable. And you see him not making quick decisions. Like, he had hot read options on a couple of scramble/sacks that he just didn't take. And I'm very natural for a young quarterback. We're going to see progression in that department. I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, man. He didn't. I guess for me, he didn't. Oh, that McCulley throw. He didn't read it. He decided I'm throwing it to McCulley.
I mean, the first play of the game, I'm like,
Yeah.
I was like, that's a 6-man box. That seems like a pretty good run look to me, but okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's right now. So
I thought they were. I like that a little bit just because I thought Lindsey was playing USC. I think he was saying if you got that, take it. Because USC, this is my point I wanted to make. USC played well for USC in this game. Their defense did. When Alex was looking at this, Alex Drain did a great write up on them, and he had me look at a couple plays and ask me what the coverages were and stuff like that. And I was just like, these guys. They just don't have playmakers back there. And the defensive line kept on getting out of their lanes. And somebody coached, Danton Lynn did a great job coaching them that week. Because their guys were in their lanes. The guy who broke up that pass to Marsh, he's been abused all year. So I was like, when they went after him originally, I was just like, yes, go after that guy.
I'm not convinced the USC defense is any good at all. And I think they're going to get gashed going forward.
Yeah. So that'll do it for us. Ira, I didn't do. Have we been generous today?
We have, just not in the last hour, but I can't play the sounder because YouTube will get it mad at us. But we can still give away the passes.
Yeah, we'll give away the passes. Caller number 734-998-1050. You'll join us inside the Bud Light Victor's Lounge where we do the countdown to kickoff, folks. That'll do it for us here on the Roundtable. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Big 1050 WTK, online at thebig1050.com.
I'm sorry about that, Sam.